Come see the Portland Art Museum's new exhibit where they're showcasing the vibrant, surreal, and playful energy of rock concert posters and fashion from 1960s San Francisco. Aptly named Psychedelic Rock Posters and Fashion of the 1960s, this collection of nearly 200 posters and eclectic vintage fashion is on display through the end of March next year. But you can also check the Portland Art Museum calendar for lectures, movies, and more related to the Psychedelic Posters exhibit at portlandartmuseum.org. Hey Portland, are you ready to vote? The League of Women Voters has reliable, nonpartisan information about what's on your ballot. You can watch candidate interviews, listen to podcasts, read balanced explanations of ballot measures, and even learn more about ranked choice voting, which seems like a thing we all need to do. Go to lwvpdx.org or to vote411.org, and there you can view just the candidates and measures on your ballot. Vote with confidence with lwvpdx.org. Today on CityCast Portland, we're continuing to sort through the nearly 100 candidates running for 12 open city council seats. And since we looked into the district races this summer, a lot has changed. For one, there are way more candidates. Also this time around, we're covering the city council races by honing in on the candidates with the most individual contributions in each district. We'll be looking at what they're campaigning on, who's supporting them, and how they're trying to stand out. City Hall reporter at Willamette Week, Sophie Peel, is here to talk through District 4 once again, and if you need a refresher, that's the district covering all of West Portland along with a sliver of inner Southeast. It's Monday, October 21st. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. So District 4 is demographically the wealthiest and widest district in all of Portland, and though accurate, it's also not representative of all the areas within its boundaries because you also have the West Side Industrial District, downtown, and parts of inner Southeast. And District 4 is where you reside, Sophie, and you're a journalist, famously not wealthy.
What's your point? Get to your question.
I was just saying it's also one of the districts with the most city council candidates on the ballot, which is tied with District 3 at 30. So you being here helping us go through this is like very helpful.
Happy to be here. Wouldn't want to be doing anything else.
But before we get into these individual candidates in broad strokes, like how is the race shaping up? Like what's changed since the last time we spoke about it in July?
Gosh, I'm trying to remember what I said about District 4 back in July. It doesn't feel like it was all that long ago. But, I don't think anything major has changed, but I think it has become clearer mostly through various endorsements, whether it's from news organizations or unions or business groups. I think it's become clear who the group of people is that are really like genuinely in the running. Mm-hmm. I think beforehand there were 15 or 20 people that, had at least a little bit of name recognition, were getting some donations. And I think that group has really narrowed since then. And I also think it's become increasingly clear kind of this divide between really progressive candidates and really kind of moderate business-friendly candidates. And I feel like that division is clearer in this district than it is in others.
All right. So we've decided to take a look at the 6 top candidates from each district as ranked by the number of individual contributions they've received. Our thinking is that looking at that total number of voters who've donated to them will give us a broader picture of the community support than just looking at the total dollar amount that they've raised.
Yes.
And those 6 candidates in order of the most individual contributions raised are Mitch Green, Olivia Clark, Chad Likens, Eli Arnold, Stan Penkin, and Sarah Silkey. But let's start off with Mitch Green, who at the date of this taping has 1,307 individual contributions.
Yeah, and I will say, so we're going to go over the candidates with the most individual donors. I will say I don't think that's always necessarily reflective of broad community support, especially when, for instance, Mitch Green, which you correctly noted, has the most number of individual donations. He's getting a whole big leg up from Democratic Socialist of America, which is doing a lot of canvassing for him. So I do want to say there's some really serious candidates that did not make it into this list because they're not necessarily really aggressively canvassing. So I think there's different ways to see the seriousness of candidates. I think this is one metric, but it's certainly not the only metric. Neither is most money raised. But anyways, Mitch Green. He's a really interesting guy. He was formerly in the military. And I think when you think someone who's formerly in the military, you probably think someone who's a little bit more conservative. He is the most liberal candidate running in District 4. He is a self-proclaimed socialist. He, up until recently, worked as an economist for Bonneville Power. He's the most left politically, I think, of any other top candidate. Another thing that really makes him interesting, too, is we had him in our office for endorsement interviews, and we brought in every single candidate, or at least we invited every single candidate. And Mitch sort of just flew in the face of all the somewhat moderate policies that I think have really taken hold in this city in recent years. And I think a lot of the policies that, like, frustrated Portlanders have gotten on board with too. Like, for instance, he, really pushed back against this idea that high-income Portlanders are leaving Multnomah County because of the high tax burden. Olivia Clark is next. She is a longtime sort of government leader. She worked under former John Kitzhaber for a number of years and then went to work for TriMet for 20 years. She sat on various boards, very moderate, business friendly. She's gotten a whole host of endorsements. She is just seen as a very sort of sage person in this district and someone that is widely liked because she's blunt, but because she also knows what she's talking about. Chad Likens, he is the owner of a for-profit chess company that offers chess classes across schools. He is similar to Mitch Green in that he's quite leftist in his policies. I think there is a little bit of tension. There's a little bit of friction between Chad Likens' campaign and some of the other campaigns in that district. I think there's been some hard feelings about the fact that there's a number of children that are in Chad's chess program that are actually canvassing for him as well. So it's created
that's interesting. Also famously doesn't play chess from what I've been told.
Well, that was one of my better jokes. I fondly remember that joke. When I was listening to the episode, I rewinded it like 4 times. I was like, God, that was funny. That was one of my brightest moments.
You're like, I fooled Claudia.
I got him.
That's so funny. We're referring to our previous conversation about this. She set up Chad Likens as like the chess guy and then just slipped in that he doesn't play chess. And I fully believed it. But anyhow, moving on.
Okay. Anyways, moving on. Yes. Eli Arnold, he is famously a Portland bike cop. So he's on the downtown bike squad. So they pedal around and chase fentanyl dealers. He's, branded himself as a cop who, really cares about the homeless population and actually knows quite a few of them downtown, like by name, because he has such frequent interactions with them. And, he's sort of branded himself as, yes, we need law and order, but also I'm not just, I'm not an angry cop that just wants to like throw homeless people in jail. And I think he's actually done that quite well, partly because he's pretty soft-spoken. He's not what you'd expect from a cop. And so I think because people went in with sort of the assumption of like, oh, he's going to be a tough guy. And he's so not. Like, he's really into gardening. And, he's more complex than that. I think that has really like endeared people to him. Then we've got Stan Pankin, who is the longtime neighborhood association leader with the Pearl District. He's really big into the arts. He sat on a variety of boards having to do with sort of art organizations. He's quite politically moderate. He's also received endorsements from all 4 city commissioners that are running for office. He's old. He's definitely old, but he's still quite sharp.
I would say he has more life experience than the other candidates.
He has more wisdom, one might say. There we go. Yes. More life lived.
Yeah, there's also Sarah Silkey, who at this moment has 520 contributions.
Yeah, Sarah is a longtime engineer with the Portland Water Bureau. She's very pro-union. She's quite left. I think she is kind of well-liked amongst other candidates, not necessarily for her policy positions, but she's got a great laugh. She's got a great sense of humor, and I think she's just well-liked because she's easy to get along with. So she's, again, sort of more in the Chad Likens camp politically wise.
I'm curious, Sophie, if there are any other candidates from these top 6 that you would choose just because you did make a big fuss about the way our metrics possibly not being the best.
Okay, I don't know if I would characterize it as a big fuss. I didn't
a big fuss.
I didn't throw a tantrum and pound the floor.
A big fuss was made. Yeah.
Yeah. So I threw a huge fuss. And
no, I'm just curious. Like, would these be your top 6? Not that we're not talking about you voting. We're just like, these are the top 6 that are.
They would certainly be among them. But there's definitely some other serious candidates. I think there's Tony Morse, who was a former legislative policy guy for Oregon Recovers. He has a pretty strong campaign. He's got a whole lot of donations. Bob Weinstein, I think, is running a pretty serious campaign. He was the mayor of Ketchikan, Alaska for many years, and then came to Oregon and sort of became civically involved. So he knows a lot about local government. There is a woman named Lisa Freeman, who I think is also a serious candidate. She either currently works for the city or up until recently worked for the city in their gun violence prevention program. So the last person I should mention, who I think is a very serious candidate, is Eric Zimmerman, who's not in this top 6, but I think he's a pretty serious candidate. Yeah, there's a number of really, I think, notable candidates that didn't make it onto this list.
Yeah. And we won't be talking about them. I just want to make sure, I just wanted you to, because you're following this race, So I wanted to hear what other candidates you thought were pretty strong. So speaking of the 6 that we did go into detail, how would you sort them between who's pushing more progressive policies and who's taking a more moderate path?
I would say these 6 candidates are easily separatable, and it's 3 and 3.
Okay.
Between quite progressive, as in, the legislature did the wrong thing by recriminalizing fentanyl. We don't need more cops on our streets. We either need to fill vacancies or we just don't need more at all. And I would say the progressive ones are Mitch Green, Chad Likens, and Sarah Silke. The moderate ones, Stan Penkin, Eli Arnold, Olivia Clark.
I am curious about when you say moderates, because whenever I think of Portland politics, it's rare when I actually think somebody is not a progressive. Are these like true moderates or just like Portland moderate? Does that make sense?
No, totally. Yeah. I totally see what you're saying. And I think when I say moderate, I mean Portland moderate, which is something different. I mean, it is different to be a Portland moderate than it is to be a federal moderate. I think Portland, when I use the word moderate, to me, it means that these people feel like the current situation is untenable and that what we need is more cops on the street. We need some semblance of like kind of our expectations of people, even if they're homeless in public, about their behavior. I think it means that they're very unhappy with sort of the status quo of really focusing more on building housing rather than, building shelter. So that's what I mean by Portland moderate.
Yeah.
There's no top candidates that are like, we don't support trans kids or, we don't believe in gay marriage. Like that's not even
in the discussion.
Right, exactly. So it's Portland moderate.
Yeah. And I just wanted to highlight that because people are listening and we're also, looking into a federal race and in the word moderate gets thrown around and it's like moderate for what, So
yes.
Thank you for breaking that down. All right. Well, let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, the important issues rising to the top for District 4.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See detail.
Did you know you can find the best deals at the Habitat for Humanity Portland Region Restores? You can shop for new and gently used furniture, appliances, lighting, building materials, decor, home goods, and more, all at discounted prices of 25 to 75% off. Let me say that again. That's 25 to 75% off your favorite home and furniture brands. And bonus, every purchase helps fund local Habitat home building and home repair programs. Plus, you're shopping sustainably at the Restore by giving pre-loved items new life and keeping usable items out of our local landfills. Shop online or in-store at the Restore locations in Beaverton, Gresham, and Portland. The Restores are open 7 days a week. Visit pdxrestore.org to find a Restore near you, and there you can shop, save, and give back today. Next, I'm wondering if there are certain concerns that seem to be rising to the top for District 4 that you're hearing, not only as a person who lives there, but someone who's covering the race.
Yeah, I would say I've actually been surprised that there are not more specific District 4 issues that are kind of dominating the discussion. Like District 1, the East Portland district, they have like really unique issues that the candidates are consistently bringing up. I think actually District 2 in some ways, right? The expansion of I-5, the Albina district, the future of the Blazers, they have specific issues too. District 3 and District 4, I feel like have less focus on certain issues and their candidates are sort of more talking citywide. I don't think District 4 candidates are talking all that much more about the downtown core, even though it's in their district, than any other candidates. I think everyone acknowledges that the downtown core is the economic center. So there's usually a question in there about, hey, what are you going to do to bring back business? What are you going to do to attract developers to the city? But I just don't see District 4 voters really having certain topics that are particular to District 4 that they're talking a lot about. Part of me thinks that not that District 4 doesn't have issues, but I don't think it necessarily has the magnitude of issues other than downtown.
Yeah. Well, let's look at endorsements. Like, how are the major institutional players lining up around these candidates? Let's look at the police union. Who are they backing?
The police union has endorsed both Olivia Clark and Eli Arnold. They've also endorsed Eric Zimmerman in District 4, which is not on the top 6 in this list. But, of course, it's not surprising that they chose Eli Arnold. He is one of their sworn officers. And, if the union even has one cop on city council, that's like a huge win for them. His big endorsers are really the public safety unions. So the fire union and the police union. He doesn't have labor endorsements. He does have United for Portland, which is the Portland Metro Chamber's political action committee that's sort of sprung into action, no pun intended, this year. Yeah, he mostly has public safety unions, which honestly is like...
Makes sense.
2-3 years ago, getting an endorsement from the Portland Police Association was like a scarlet letter. No one wanted it. You didn't want it. And if you got it, you didn't put it on your website, right? And you only talked about it if someone asked you about it.
Yeah.
Now it's like, I got the endorsement of the Portland Police Association. Like now it has rebranded itself to be a good thing now in the eyes of sort of many Portlanders.
Yeah.
So he is getting really backed by public safety unions.
I do want to pause just real quick. I feel like a big part of that is that we've had so many city council members that have gone head to head with the police department, which, at times was needed. And then we saw the relationship between the city and the police department crumble to a point where they weren't doing their jobs. That's what it just felt like. So I can totally see why someone's like, look, they'll work with me. I'm the guy who's going to bring the police department back in,
I think that's very fair. What I will say, and this is going to a District 1 candidate, but that has been Terrence Hayes' big argument. He's a Black man. His cousin, Quanice Hayes, in 2017 was killed by a Portland police officer. He's been endorsed by the police union. And his whole shtick is look, I can help change the police bureau by working with the union, right? He's kind of using that argument. I think that's kind of the same argument that Eli Arnold is using too. He's like, look, I'm part of this system, so I know how to work with them to make them better. So it is sort of like, I got their support. I understand they're not perfect, but you can't change it if you're just throwing stones from the outside. You got to do it from the inside, which is, it's a smart way to kind of change that narrative.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the fire union. I know you mentioned that they were backing Eli Arnold, but I know that they've also endorsed another city council candidate in District 4. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So the fire union also endorsed Olivia Clark. It's interesting to try to figure out sort of how exactly the fire union chooses who to endorse. I mean, they do interviews as well, but I think they really oftentimes go in lockstep with the police union.
I've noticed that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's partly because they're politically aligned, but also their issues are quite aligned. I mean, both of these unions like that their members can make pretty ample overtime money. And they don't want city commissioners, city leadership to challenge that. And so I think they look for people who will basically say, look, I'm not really going to mess with the fire bureau.
Gotcha. Well, let's talk about United for Portland, which is basically the Portland Metro Chamber's PAC, who are they also endorsing? I think you mentioned Eli Arnold.
Yes. So United for Portland is endorsing Eli Arnold, Olivia Clark, and Stan Finken. They've also got 3 others in District 4 that they're sort of doing as their main endorsements. They are very much going, I think,
they're going to be hand in hand for the moderates. And those are the moderates that you pointed out.
Yes.
So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
To me, anyhow, that it would be, fire, safety, and business.
Yeah, it totally aligns. Like, none of United for Portland's endorsements were surprising to me. I mean, they are looking for Portland moderate candidates who are, going to enforce the city's time, place, and manner ordinance. Who are going to really focus on graffiti cleanup and bringing back, a downtown business and also development to downtown by incentivizing ways to create office space or build new. So, yeah, none of their endorsements surprised me, and it is quite along those kind of fault lines.
Right. Well, let's look at the major local publications. Who have the Oregonian endorsed?
So the Oregonian endorsed 3 candidates in each district. Eric Zimmerman, who is Chief of Staff to Multnomah County Commissioner Julia Berm Edwards. They endorsed Olivia Clark, and they endorsed Eli Arnold. That's exactly who Willamette Week endorsed in District 4. That's the only district in which Willamette Week and Oregonian had like 3 for 3. They matched all 3 of them. In the other district, it's pretty different.
That's interesting.
So that is, yes, it's super interesting. I'm not surprised. I think that for those 3 candidates, it's huge to have both of those endorsements. I think the Mercury endorsed Mitch Green in District 4. I'm not sure who the other people are that they endorsed.
I think they endorsed Chad Likens and Sarah Silky.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And you put all 3 as the most progressives. And of course, the Portland Mercury, if you did not know, famously a very left-leaning paper.
Yes.
So that makes a lot of sense.
There's been a lot of surprises in this election, and that's not one of them.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of surprises, I am curious if anything's jumping out in a surprising way, like if anyone's making surprising headlines within these city council candidates.
Well, some District 4 candidates have been sort of involved in this reporting I've been doing about the donation swapping agreements. Like Chad Likens is currently, being investigated by the Secretary of State for donation swapping. I think Zimmerman's probably in there too.
Yeah. And if you guys missed that, if you're like, what is she talking about? The city council candidates were basically like, hey, I'll donate to your campaign if you donate to mine. So they're able to reach match funding and unlock even more funding for their campaign. And that was, of course, like a big no-no. And a lot of them are just like, oh, I didn't know, which I can totally see. I can totally see being like, what? But then I feel like a lot of these people are also, they're not new.
Yeah, they probably should have known, but I also get how things can get away from them. I don't think it really excuses it, but I also don't think that there was any malicious intent by any means.
Mm-hmm.
And then, this is sort of a petty small thing, but there was some beef between Olivia Clark and Chad Likens because at a candidate event about a month ago, Chad Likens' campaign manager walked up to Olivia Clark with one of her signs and said, hey, this was near a bus stop and it was illegally placed. And so I thought you might want it back. And he hands it over to her. And Olivia Clark says she took it in sort of an intimidating way. She was like, it just felt really out of line. It felt like it was almost an intimidation tactic. And we asked about it in our endorsement interview, and they had a bit of a heated exchange where Chad was basically like, yeah, you have a ton of illegally placed signs. Olivia was like, show me proof. And then Chad was like, okay, I will. And then I don't know if anything happened, but
that already sounds so petty. No.
Oh, it's so petty.
I would immediately just be like, no, guys, both of you, no.
No, I was egging him on. No, just kidding.
So, if you're sitting through so many endorsement interviews,
you need some fun.
Yeah. Sophie, I would also be egging them on.
Yeah. There are times when I wanted to die during our endorsement interviews.
You're like, if I could be honest, I did wish for death during those interviews. Well, Sophie, thank you for helping us go through some of the District 4 candidates. Who are you voting for? I want the ranking order.
I cannot say.
You know what? I've been asking everyone and no one's fallen for it.
Wow, I can't believe it.
I know. I can't believe it either.
Despite me sometimes being the dumbest girl alive, I didn't fall for it.
I'll get you next time, Sophie. That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend, rate or leave us a review. It really does help us out. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.